Welcome to the cost of leadership. This is part 2 of our first section of Next Level Leadership, and in this video snippet that we have the opportunity to watch today, we're going to talk about the cost of leadership. Jesus said in Mark 10:38, "Ye know not what ye ask. Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" Jesus was saying that there's a cost to leadership. There's a price to pay to be in a position of leadership. And so today I want to go through 7 things, a list of 7 things, the 7 costs of leadership. Number 1 is discipline and self-sacrifice. In a recent sermon I mentioned that the word sacrifice in the original language means to slay or to slaughter. 1 Corinthians 15:31, Paul says, "I die daily." I read a book some time ago by a man by the name of Richard Makowitz. And it was called Unleashing the Warrior Within. Richard Makowitz is a Navy SEAL. And he talked about carving a toughness groove in your brain. And he spoke of the disciplines that it took to become a Navy SEAL. The Bible says of Jesus, "In the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place, and there he prayed." I think a couple interesting things there about that verse in Mark 1:35. First of all, he rose up a great while before day. He was up before everybody else is up. It makes it sound like it was still dark, and yet Jesus would rise up. He would go out, he would go to a solitary place, and there he would pray. He was carving a toughness groove in his brain. There's an old expression, sow an act, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a lifestyle. Sow a lifestyle, and reap a destiny. 2 Timothy 2:15 says, "Study to show yourself approved, a workman who needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." 2 key words in there. Number 1, study. And number 2, workman. It's interesting how, to me, that appeals to 2 different types of personalities. One is the guy who's book smart, the guy who has the interest in the intellectual aspect of things, to study. Then the workman, the guy who maybe works with his hands and is strong in his body. So you've got the aspect of studying and the aspect of a workman. Study to show yourself approved. A workman who needeth not to be ashamed. It takes discipline and self-sacrifice to do either of those. I'm blessed as a pastor to have staff members that are self-starters. Tremendous value in being a self-starter. And the book of Proverbs teaches us about this. It uses the ant in Proverbs 6. "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, no overseer, and no ruler, provides her meat in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest." Are you a self-starter? Are you a self-starter when no one makes you do something? Are you like the ant who without an overseer, without a ruler, without a guide, still does what they need to do? Proverbs 30:27 says, "The locusts have no king, yet they go forth all of them by bands." They stay disciplined. They stay in ranks even though they have no king, no overseer, no ruler. They're self-disciplined. You know, Sir Edmund Hillary, the first climber to reach the summit of Mount Everest, said, "It's not the mountain that we conquer, but ourselves." How true that is. Marie Chapin said, lack of discipline leads to frustration and self-loathing. It's interesting, the guy who thinks he gets to do whatever he wants, the guy who's 30 years old and still plays video games in his mom's basement, he hates himself. He's not happy. He's not doing what he really wants to do. But his lack of discipline is really a source of frustration to him, and it causes self-loathing. Self-discipline is the bridge between ambition and achievement. You know, lots of people have ambition. Anybody can have ambition. Lots of people want to be something. But the bridge between ambition and achievement is self-discipline. What are you willing to do? What's the price you're willing to pay? Frank Layden, coach of the Utah Jazz, said, the will to win isn't worth a nickel without the will to work. The will to win isn't worth a nickel without the will to practice. So, as far as the cost of leadership, number 1 on the list, discipline and self-sacrifice. Number 2, loneliness. In 2 Timothy 1:15, Paul, the great apostle, said, "All they which are in Asia be turned away from me." You know, life gets harder the closer you get to the summit. The air gets colder, it gets a little windier, it gets a little thinner, your companions become few, perhaps non-existent. Roger Staubach said there are no traffic jams along the 2nd mile. The Old Testament prophets were lonely men. Pastors are often lonely men. Now in my situation, I grew up as a Christian in this church since young adulthood. I was a member of the congregation before I was pastor, so it's a little bit different with me, but pastors are often lonely men. There's an expression that is used in this situation. They say, acquainted with everyone, friends with no one. Sometimes a position of leadership can be lonely. J. Oswald Sanders said, "My loneliest hours have come when alienated from the ones I love because of holding fast to what I believe is right and not necessarily popular." A.W. Tozer said, "Most of the world's greatest souls have been lonely." So there's self-discipline and there's loneliness as far as the cost of leadership. Number 3 is fatigue. John 4:6 says, "Jesus therefore being wearied with the journey." You know, good workers get more work. It's true. I worked in a factory for 24 years, and when an order had to get out, when it had to be done a certain way and by a certain time, they didn't give it to the guy who doesn't do anything. They gave it to the best worker. Good workers end up with more work. You know, I come from the school of thought that sleep is overrated. We're talking about fatigue. I maintain that sleep is necessary to a point, totally unproductive after that. You see, mediocrity is the result of only doing what's necessary and never getting tired. Fatigue is the price of success. No lasting good comes without effort and expenditure of energy. Tom Stoppard said, "Responsibilities gravitate to the person who can shoulder them, and it takes energy to shoulder responsibility." The good news is that believers know where to go to get recharged. 2 Corinthians 4:16 says, "For which cause we faint not, but though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day." Good leaders expend a lot of energy, but they know where to go to reload. It's been said the world is run by tired men. How true it is. Number 4, criticism. Galatians 1:10 says, "For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I yet pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ." You see, you can strive to serve people, or you can work to please God. You might as well understand and recognize that criticism comes with leadership. When no one wants to make a decision, it's the leader who must decide. An umpire makes half the people unhappy with every decision he makes. Popularity is a lousy barometer of how to make a decision or whether it was the right decision. You can't please everyone, so you might as well do it right. Criticism comes with leadership. A thick skin is not a prerequisite for a leader, only one who plans on being around for a while. And I like this statement. Humility is on trial when criticism comes. My definition of humility is seeing yourself as you really are. And when criticism comes, it's really important that you continue to see yourself as God sees you. It's important that you continue to see yourself as you really are and not get beaten down by the criticism. Learn to glean from the criticism, but don't let the criticism beat you down. Number 5, rejection. John 1:11 said, He came unto His own, and His own received Him not. Jesus was rejected. To be denied, denounced, rebuffed, refused, refuted, and dismissed is part of the leadership landscape. T.S. Eliot said, only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far they can go. To continue constantly along the status quo is not leading at all. It's not leading from the front. A true leader comforts the afflicted, but he also afflicts the comforted. And this will result in opposition and sometimes rejection. Often the crowd does not recognize a leader until he's gone. And then they build a monument to him with the same stone they threw at him while he was still around. The goal cannot be to avoid rejection. The goal must be to lead well. Number 6, pressure. Matthew 26:39. Oh, my Father, if it be possible, Jesus said, let this cup pass from me. You know, there are times when it feels like it all rests on the leader. It's how you react under pressure that determines a great measure of your success as a leader. If everything always went right, we wouldn't need leaders. We need leaders to navigate us through the chaos. Pressure is not always a bad thing, by the way. Pressure is a great motivator. Deadlines and pressure are what keep Korean going, I think. And we all need a little bit of pressure as a motivator. A hero, it says, we're talking about pressure now, a hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he's braver 5 minutes longer. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that. You know, and it's those 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes when you're braver longer than everybody else as a leader. It's those 5 minutes that are pressure-packed. It's when you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you're willing to put yourself on the line anyway. You're willing to shoulder the responsibility. It's those 5 minutes that separate the men from the boys. It's in those 5 figurative minutes that we discover who wants to pee with the big dogs and who it is that's just piddling with the pups. Larry Bird said there's a big difference in who wants the ball at the buzzer based on what the score is. If it's tied, everyone wants it because there's nothing to lose. Either you win or you go into overtime. But if you're down by 1, that's when the ball becomes a hot potato. The intensity is magnified because of the win or lose proposition at stake. The difference is pressure. Good leaders know that pressure is part of the equation. And finally, number 7, collateral damage. In Luke 14, it says, there went great multitudes with him. He turned and said unto them, if any man comes to me, and he hates not his father and his mother, and his wife, and his children, and his brethren, and his sisters, yea, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And whosoever does not bear his cross, and come after me, cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sits not down first, and counts the cost, whether he has sufficient to finish it? So likewise, whosoever he be of you, that forsakes not all that he has, he cannot be my disciple. You see, many would be qualified from leadership right there. Collateral damage is a reality of war and a reality of leadership. People close to a leader often pay a heavy price, sometimes a heavier price. Ask a wife who has to sit by helplessly while her husband is unjustly criticized, maybe even justly criticized. Ask a child who's ridiculed because his dad is an unpopular leader. Bart Starr had 2 sons. The older is successful in life, while the younger battled drug addiction for many years and eventually died of an overdose. Bart Starr attributes the difference, at least in part, to the fact that the older son was in his impressionable years while Starr was a successful quarterback for the Green Bay Packers during their glory years. The younger was in his impressionable years while Starr was the beleaguered coach of the struggling franchise. Those close to a leader often share in the cost. Fred Mitchell, in a letter to his children upon his appointment as director of China Inland Mission, said, I have many a great sorrow of heart, and still remains one of my chief regrets that I have not been able to give myself to mother and you children more. The harvest is great and the laborers few, which means that there have been many calls upon me. I do not justify my negligence, but any sacrifice made by you for our dear Lord Jesus' sake has not been unrewarded. The collateral damage. Well, let me wrap this up. In conclusion, it takes a leader to embark on any dangerous venture. It takes a leader to build for the kingdom. That's why Jesus' words were so passionate. Count the cost and take up your cross. The cost of committed leadership is significant. Discipline and self-sacrifice, loneliness, fatigue, criticism, rejection, pressure, and the collateral damage. You know, if you want to know about the pleasures of leadership, ask those who seek it. If you want to know about the pains of leadership, ask those who have it. Thanks for being a part of the teaching today. The cost of leadership. God bless you.